Welcome to Insider Career Conversations, the podcast that dives deep into the world of unconventional professions. I'm your host, Sylvia Juarez. I'm here to guide you through the maze of unique career paths that often go unnoticed. Each season, we explore a different realm of career possibilities. This season, it's AI. With AI rapidly reshaping industries and becoming a central topic of global discourse, it's clear that it's not just the future, it's the present. So whether you're an AI enthusiast, a curious listener, or someone pondering a career pivot, enjoy today's episode. Welcome to episode 2 of the AI series. Throughout the rest of the season, my co-host and I will invite AI experts from different industries and career paths to shed light on the realm of possibilities that exist for AI-interested students and professionals. Today, Tyler and I are excited to welcome to the podcast Emma Bessier. Emma was in the inaugural class of UC Berkeley's data science degree. Recently, she completed her master's in Computational Science and Engineering at Harvard and has started her first-time role in the industry. We are thrilled to have her on board today. Thank you so much for being here, Emma.
Hi, Sylvia. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm super excited to be here. Up until now, so starting work in industry, a lot of my experiences in AI have focused around precision medicine and computational neuroscience. So I've worked on projects where we've modeled neural responses in the brain, projects where we've used accelerometer and gyroscope data from the iPhone to predict the severity of someone's Parkinson's disease. And as you mentioned, I just started working in industry and I'm working at a small AI research and consulting firm that's based out of California. But I'm currently working remotely from Texas.
That's fantastic, Emma. So I'm going to go back a little bit because I am a Golden Bear. So go Bears, UC Berkeley.
Awesome.
Curious to know, so why data science? It seems like it was something that, especially inaugural, you don't even know if it's something what the degree will do for you. I understand that Berkeley has, independent of my bias, has a great reputation, but what drew you to a degree like that?
Yeah, so I actually went into college thinking that I was going to study to be a doctor and started taking the pre-medical school requirements. And then Berkeley came out with this kind of first official data science course. If anyone ends up going to Berkeley, the course is Data 8. It's called Foundations of Data Science. Sure. And took it, absolutely fell in love with it. And I was interested in medicine. And by the end of the first semester, we had learned how to develop a simple machine learning model to predict whether a breast cancer tumor was cancerous or benign. And so that really drew me into data science kind of into my sophomore year. So decided to make the switch over to the data science major, which they were just kind of putting together at that time. So I was the first cohort of students to actually graduate with that degree. But yeah, that was kind of what got me interested in that in the first place.
So Emma, one thing that I really loved about what you just relayed there, and what I think is really critically useful for students in the podcast to hear, was your point that you came into data science kind of through the intersection of a previous passion you had, medicine and biology, and learning that you could solve problems in that field through data science. I think that's really cool because it speaks to the fact that AI is, yes, its own field, data science is its own field, but they're also toolkits in a way to approach and solve problems in other fields. Did you feel like that was like your transition into AI and data science, just that realization that this was a cool area to begin applying to something you already loved?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that a lot of the students that I really interacted with and got to know in the data science program, data science kind of supplemented what they were interested in. They were usually double majors in things, even in qualitative fields like English, which is becoming a lot more relevant when you look at the intersections of English and AI and using things like natural language processing for models like ChatGPT, legal studies. There's all different types of students that you meet in the data science program and meet that are working in AI. So that's definitely something that I encountered.
So I guess, Emma, for a listener that's thinking about, like you did an intersection between healthcare and engineering, did you have that mindset before you went into that field? I know you had interest, but when you were in high school, let's say, were you already thinking about those types of intersections, or did it just kind of come about?
No, and this is something that I would love to talk about. Actually, in high school, I didn't even take a pre-calculus course. I had absolutely no technical background and was, in a lot of ways, very intimidated to take my first data science and technical course at Berkeley. That's one of the reasons that it took me until my sophomore year to take it for the first time. But yeah, I found that it was a lot more accessible than I thought, and kind of went back and took a lot of the foundational courses in college because I loved it so much, which meant as a sophomore, junior in college, going back to take pre-calculus, to take calculus, and to be with a lot of younger students that were doing those same courses.
Got it. That's fantastic. Do you think that was attributed to, are you first generation in your family to go to college or first generation to be exposed to the field?
No, I'm not. I'm from a smaller Texas town. That's where I grew up. My high school didn't have a lot of the same resources for coding and math that a lot of public high schools do in California, where this is probably a little bit more of a popular thing to pursue as a profession.
Yeah, I resonate with that a lot, Emma. I am first gen college student, or
Mhm.
was a first gen college student. We're past that now. The first in my family to be exposed to topics like AI or to kind of think about that as accessible. Went to
Yeah.
a small public school and felt the same way as you coming out of it. I didn't even have a understanding that the field was within my reach, let alone know much about it at all. So I think it really is true that in a lot of smaller public schools, especially when you're not in centralized AI places like SF or California in general, awareness of this kind of opportunity isn't always so clear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say one of the greatest pieces of advice that I've received about the AI profession is actually from my mom. And it's just to be confident in yourself and to forgive yourself a little bit. We're all kind of working on different timelines as far as when we're introduced to AI for the first time, how we decide to pursue a profession in it, and to have the confidence to believe that you always have something to contribute to conversations in AI, even if, say, you don't want to pursue a technical career in it.
So, so may I ask, because you guys are well versed in this field and we're talking about expanding things for students, especially the ones that I may talk to. I went from high school directly into college, university, but we have some community college students. We have some individuals who are trying to make a pivot, similar to what it sounds like you did, Emma. Can you guys describe or can you define the difference between maybe data science and artificial intelligence and how maybe that has defined within your roles or how maybe you two work together?
Ooh, I briefly differentiated AI and data science in our last episode, so I really am curious to hear Emma's potentially better explanation than what I offered.
Yeah. So my personal kind of definition of AI would be kind of software or models that can mimic human cognition. So models that are able to draw conclusion from things that humans interact with, whether it be kind of visual stimuli, images, videos, sound, or text. So pretty specific. I would define data science more broadly as inferential thinking with respect to data. We have data coming from a lot of different places these days. It's being collected all of the time. And how do we draw useful conclusions from it? So that's kind of the goal of data science. Sits kind of at the intersection of, I would say, math, computer science, and statistics. And it's not necessarily about modeling, it's more broadly about drawing insightful conclusions from a data set.
Thank you so much. I think it's also important that as individuals are going into their fields, they're sharing what they see or how they define things, which I think is really important. So, my side of the street is college admissions. So, I want to make sure that I'm also asking questions about the idea of students and their preparation. How do you see that? How do you think you would have gotten some advice or would have liked to have learned something at that time?
As I mentioned, I went into the data science program without any preparation, starting from scratch, taking pre calculus, which wasn't even a requirement of the data science degree. It was a requirement to get into calculus. So I think it would be helpful for students to start getting some of those basic prerequisites done. A lot of those across universities would be entry level courses in computer science and statistics and in mathematics. Probably most useful would be calculus 1, calculus 2, and maybe linear algebra.
Ooh, okay.
That would put them at a probably an advantage to go ahead and get started with some of the more advanced courses in a data science degree.
I think just to tack on to that, something also important to consider for students, especially if they're able to define their interests even younger. To be clear, no judgment here. I didn't know what I was going to major until my sophomore year of college. But when a student knows they want to pursue an opportunity like data science, I think getting the experience, not just of coursework, but independent projects like capstone projects, AP research, if their school is lucky enough to offer it, is great ways for students to dive deep into the data science field and get experience that helps them showcase on their extracurricular sections, supplements that they're ready to drive forward. So I know you're more the expert in the admissions process itself, but this is my kind of impression meeting with my peers who went into these kinds of degrees, hearing from kids nowadays, especially as the admissions competition has gotten so fierce.
Yeah, just also to add on to that, as a high school student or potential transfer student, when looking at colleges, you might also want to look at what their data science degree looks like. Because this is a new degree for pretty much every university in the US. And for Berkeley, it's grown so much, they've actually had to create a new kind of division, a school for
Yep.
computing
Yeah.
based off of a data science degree. And so Berkeley is one of those schools that has a lot of resources to support the data science program. They're starting to create an entire curriculum that is data science, that are courses that are labeled data science courses. Whereas other schools, you might graduate with a data science degree, but it might be kind of a montage of computer science, math, statistics, and you're kind of left to put all of the pieces together. So that's something to kind of think about as you're looking for universities that offer data science degrees, is what exactly that curriculum looks like, because it varies so much at this point in time between schools.
I really love that you're saying that, Emma, because I think part of my conversations with students is just that, regardless of major, that's a big part of what I discuss with them. So now we've talked about the classroom. Outside of the classroom, if someone's interested, what type of mentorship opportunities or what type of things happen where a student can be exposed to this particular field?
I can talk about my own personal experience mentoring. So I've worked with Tyler. I've been a part of a company called Veritas AI for a couple of years now. I've been an instructor for both their AI Scholars Program, which is a kind of intensive introduction to data science and AI. So during the summer, it's like 2 weeks of a few hours a day where students are able to view a lecture on AI. They go through a code walkthrough in Python, and then they do their own coding exercises with a mentor in a small group. So I've been an instructor for that. I also work with students in a one-on-one setting doing mentorship with a personal project of theirs. Say they're interested in medicine or they're interested in another area. I help guide them through finding a data set, kind of asking relevant questions, and through that modeling task of doing something useful with the data in an AI setting.
Yeah, Veritas AI is one of so many ways, honestly, though, that students can get into this field. Emma is one of our best, most fabulous mentors. And I think she really speaks to the care that we take for our students. But there's so many other ways for students to get involved in this field. The first thing I want to highlight here is that it can be so impactful just for a student to work on their own passion project from home. Building your own technical portfolio just through independent projects like creating your own games, writing your own code for things you're interested in is something that is meaningful, not just for college apps, but for technical applications. A fun thing I like to point to here is my own brother made a career pivot at age 30 after just a couple years of putting in work to write up his own technical portfolio. And that's how he got into the tech space. And I think it's so important to highlight to younger students as well. If you hustle and you work and put in the time needed to gain that skill set, you can get there. But besides just independent hustling, there's also other programs out there, research programs, internships that students can look to try and gain more hands-on experience. Also always encourage students, think innovatively about the projects teachers give you at school. Maybe they give you a class project that you can put your own spin on with data science
Mhm.
from independent learning or from your computer science class. I think there's boundless ways for students independently or through a mentored program to build a really credible, really powerful skill set here.
Yeah, I'll also add that there are a lot of free things that you can do to create your own kind of repository of work before you enter college or before you enter the workforce. Like, there are a lot of online coding competitions that are asking you to perform an AI task that you can kind of take a stab at and potentially get ranked pretty high on their leaderboards. And that's a great way of showcasing the skills that you have with both coding and your knowledge with AI. So when I was in high school, I always thought that I enjoyed qualitative work more, like essay writing. That is, I
Well,
think, where I
thinker.
excelled in high school. And then having taken some of these, especially math courses, I would say, I discovered my love of problem solving. And if you've taken a Berkeley exam, you know that the math exams are difficult and they provide you with maybe like 3 or 4 questions for your final exam that you have hours to complete. So it's really just like sitting down, problem solving for hours. I would say day to day, I am doing a lot of the same problem solving that I would do in a math course, thinking about a client's need or a research need and how we might execute that. So, what type of model that we need to solve the problem? What are some ways of assessing model performance? Those are all things that have to be planned out ahead of the actual work, which probably takes the least amount of time, actually. And I would say that AI, it's an interesting field because it's a field that, depending on what you do, it's a little bit harder to shut your brain off at night. Like, I spend a lot of times in the evenings, even if I'm not working, just thinking about like, oh, maybe I could do this or this. And that's actually where a lot of probably my best ideas come from, is just when I'm more relaxed at home cooking dinner and come up with some approaches to solve a problem at work. So that's one difference, is having that kind of
Totally get that.
inability to maybe shut off your work at the end of the night, even if you're not physically doing stuff.
I wonder if that also, Emma, speaks to your passion for the field though, because I will say I work more, I would say, in the education space and how I leverage and use AI. I'm thinking more about AI education,
Yeah.
curriculum, all that jazz. And I feel the same way about the education work. Like when I'm thinking about a problem in our overall program structure, policies, I
Mhm.
can't shut my brain off. So I think you're right, but I also wonder if this is just speaking to like how much you love this field you've been in for so long now.
Definitely a possibility.
You can't help but want to get to that resolution for whoever, whatever. For me, it's ironing. I think my family thinks I'm crazy, but anytime I'm thinking of a proposal or a project that I need to kind of map out, I have to iron. My boys look so cute because they're all ironed. Everything's ironed perfectly pressed. So thank you so much again. And that's a great response. Thank you, Emma. So, what I'm really appreciating here is that you both are talking not only about the foreshadowing and creativity that comes along with this field, but we're also talking a lot about students who want to be independent, not only in what they're doing or what they're kind of researching to be a part of, which I think is important now more and more remote working, having projects that are team based, but maybe virtual. Can you tell me a little bit about how that plays a role in how you decided to take this field on?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit more broadly just about my experience working remotely and, I guess, what my day to day setup looks like as far as a career in AI. So I love working remotely. I think that, as you said, it gives you such a feeling of kind of independence because you're in control of your schedule. A lot of companies, especially when you're doing something like AI, don't necessarily care about the hours that you're working, but the amount of stuff that you're able to accomplish and making sure that you're meeting your goals. So it's a very flexible, I would say, career most of the time if you're working remotely. For me, working remotely is very important. And that's one reason that I wanted to pursue a degree in not just AI, but in a technical area where I could work from my laptop. I have a couple hobbies that I like to do. One of them is fostering cats. So I always have a bunch of cats in my house. sometimes they're little kittens that have to be bottle fed around the clock. And so that's something that I'm passionate about, but is really only conducive to a remote position a lot of the time. I also have a long-term boyfriend who I met at first day at Berkeley that I'm living with, and he's a professional soccer player. And so we actually don't get to choose where we live, and actually have had to move on a few days' notice. And so having a career in AI kind of affords me the flexibility to pick up and move when I need to, and to not be tied down to a in-person career. Most of my day is spent kind of thinking about problems and how I might solve them rather than actually kind of writing code itself. But
So I would assume there's a certain type of discipline, correct?
yes, I would say you definitely have to be disciplined to achieve the goals that you need to with your work. And to also, some people have a harder time working at home. There's a lot more distractions sometimes when you're in a home environment. For me, I graduated from Berkeley in 2020, and a lot of my classes had already been online at that point. Some of my graduate school was remote, and then now transitioning to a remote job isn't that much of a difference. But I know some people that's a consideration, is having the discipline to sit down and actually do a significant amount of work per day.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I didn't know you were also 2020, Emma, for undergrad. That's really cool. Me too. I think something that's interesting, Sylvia, possibly for both of our answers on the piece of discipline, is that there's also a generational thing going on for people who graduated during the pandemic or were in school during the pandemic, where having discipline to work at home may or may not be a thing because we had to work at home for a period of time, either on school or in our industry roles. I think there was something a bit more normalized. I know a lot of jobs are also going back in person right now, so it's curious to see how Gen Z professionals will react to that, although that's not fully AI.
Well, and I think there's a perception that because you're at home, you're really not doing anything. But I really do think it depends on the work that you do. Because if you're independent individual, you've got an assignment to do, you're going to be disciplined enough to do it. Yet you can still have the freedom of your lifestyle, like Emma has. I think that's important to balance because part of the podcast, Emma, is that we want to be authentic, not only to the career we're in, but also the people that we are. We want to have that balance between the self-care to ourselves and love our career, not necessarily feel like we have a job. So I think you are just beautifully laying that out for us in a time when virtual and remote are sometimes seen like a dirty word. And I think more so by my generation, thank you, Tyler, for pointing that out, that there is a generational distance in terms of how we perceive things. And that's why I love how you pointed things out so eloquently because of the fact that you're still balancing your professional life and you're moving forward and you have advanced degrees. You have an exciting lifestyle, I think, because being able to move around easily without having to worry about your career is such a difference than when I was moving into my first year out of Cal and feeling like I needed to be somewhere and doing something and it being so tied to a physical location where for you, it's literally the world is your oyster where you can go anywhere and do your job and still feel like you're contributing to something so phenomenal like healthcare and anything that has to do with the sciences in any field. So sorry to gush over you, Emma, but I'm a fan now. Team Emma. So I guess my question to you would be like, what does your family think of all this?
Well, they're definitely proud. I think it's taken them a little bit of time to have the confidence to ask me questions about my career. I'd say that having a career in AI, people don't really know what to ask. And they also don't want to sound like they don't know what it is or they're asking too simple of a question. And so I love talking about it with my family. And like I said, now they're a lot more confident in asking me all of these simple questions about what I'm doing every day. That's going to be more and more common because people are going to want to ask these questions because they're starting to see how they interact with AI on a day-to-day basis, like through ChatGPT. My parents are using ChatGPT and they're like, oh, this is actually useful. So they're very curious about it. I'd say, yeah, it took a little bit of time Typically, when I walk into a room, people are a lot more excited to ask my boyfriend about his career being a professional soccer player because it's a lot more relatable than something like AI. But
Mhm.
I'm very happy with how much interest they've shown with my career.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you that insight into your family because often students are not only going on their own on on the higher education journey, they're taking their families. And I know that as an entrepreneur, most of the time my parents don't know what I'm doing when it comes to my day to day or what the reality of my profession is, if you will. They just talk about she helps kids get into college, which is essentially it. Now I'm doing a little bit beyond just the admissions process. It's exposure, it's career readiness. And I think this is a big part of what I'm passionate about. So I think our families kind of go along with this ride with us, whichever way we go. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Any final thoughts, Emma, you want to share with our audience?
I would say if you take away anything from this podcast and from AI professionals, you should take away that some of the most skilled AI professionals come from diverse backgrounds because they have experiences that can shape their work and an understanding of how these models affect people when they're used in practice. And so, even if you think to yourself, I'll never be able to have the skills of someone that has been coding since they could type on a keyboard, I think that some of the most impactful work is done by people who have had experiences that have shaped them into someone that goes into AI and solves an important problem based off of what they've learned.
Yeah, and I think coupled with that, what I love about the compassionate leadership you bring in your mentorship at Veritas AI, Emma, and what I think we as AI educators, mentors, teachers always need to do is help make AI feel more accessible to the next generation holistically so that they know, regardless of the background they're coming from, that they can access it. It is hard work, it is a challenge, but it's a challenge they can overcome for sure. And I really just appreciate the way you framed that, thinking about how the best problem solvers and the best minds in AI and outside come from diverse backgrounds. That needs to be increasingly true. And we can only do that by our generation, making it feel more accessible to the next one.
Absolutely. And I hope that with this podcast and continued conversations, we're also reminding ourselves that AI is a new field and it's only going to be as diverse as those that are moving within it. So if we don't encourage those that are not taking certain classes to take them so that they can insert their knowledge or their experiences into AI fields, then we're not doing our jobs of diversifying that area of profession or career. So I really appreciate you taking the time to have the conversation, Emma. And Tyler, again, you have an amazing network. I am so grateful for you and I keep learning.
Thank you, Sylvia. And thank you so much to you, Emma, for joining us today. I really appreciate you sharing more about your educational journey, about your profession, very loosely about your work at Veritas. It's so lovely to learn more about you, myself, and just to be able to have you share with all of Sylvia's wonderful listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show. I've really enjoyed it.
This podcast is brought to you by Juarez Consulting. Learn more at juarezconsultinginc.com or follow us on social media or YouTube at Juarez Consulting.